It is a foggy morning at Road Atlanta, and it is going to be a great day for competition in IMSA Prototype Challenge. Welcome to today's coverage. I'm Brian Till along with Jeremy Shaw. Cars are rolling out. Final weekend for Prototype Challenge in the IMSA series, and the championship is on the line. Dakota Dickerson leads it right now along with Josh Charget, but Maurice Krantz wants it. Road Atlanta, one of the most challenging racetracks you'll find. Home of Petit Le Mans that IMSA runs every year. Brazelton, Georgia, just north of Atlanta. 2.5 miles, 12 turns, a lot of great passing opportunities and a lot of elevation change here make this racetrack really, really technical as far as the driver goes and as far as the setup on the car goes. It's also very, very cool this morning. And Jeremy, I think it's going to take the Michelin tires on these prototype challenge cars probably 6 to 8 laps to get up to temperature. Good passing zones, you and I know them, 1, 6, and heavy braking into turn 10.
A fabulous racetrack, Brian, and it's a cool, crisp morning here. I mean, the temperatures are a lot cooler than they have been for the rest of the week. So yet another challenge for the drivers. There's a lot of rain last night as well. So I think the track is still damp at the moment. Visibility down through the S isn't too good, but elsewhere on the racetrack, I think it's just fine. So I'm sure we're going to be able to go racing, but this is going to be very, very, very challenging for the opening laps, at least, Brian. Yes.
Well, and talk championship, Jeremy. Think about this. Maurice Krantz on the pole. We'll talk more about the grid in just a moment, but he's been on the pole for every race this season. That's 6 pole positions, but that's where he needs to be. He needs to win this race, Jeremy, if he has any hope of winning the championship. Josh Charget starting second in the 54 MLT Motorsports Ligier. All they need to do, by my calculations, Jeremy, is finish 5th. Is that right?
Yes, I agree with you, because if the number 21 car wins and if the number 54 car were to finish 6th, they would be tied on points. But in that situation, number 21 car would have had more wins than number 54, so would win the championship on a tiebreak. So yes, 5th place finish is what number 54 car needs from this morning's race.
And if you're sitting there thinking, well, that's easy, there are 17 cars in it. These guys have been on the podium every weekend so far. As a problem for the 15 car, it gives you an idea of just how slick the racetrack is and how cold these Michelin tires are right now. It's going to take them a while to get grip, as we said, as the 15 around in between turns 5 and 6. But Jeremy, I mean, luck comes into this as well. And think back to VIR, Virginia International Raceway, the last round. A broken drive shaft on the way out to qualify for the 54 car. So it can happen just that quickly. They didn't get to qualify there, but they did come back to a strong 2nd place finish. So you need a little bit of lady luck on your side.
Well, you do, and that is exactly what the number 21 car did not have at VR. They had a mechanical problem during the race, and that restricted them to a 10th place finish. And that, other than that, 21 car has been in control of the championship. Maurice Krantz, as you said, been on pole position for every single race and has been right up front for most of the time. And that has been the car to beat through this entire championship season. But because of that problem they had during the race at VIR, then they are now in catch-up mode, and it is going to be a tall order for them to take this championship, but they're certainly going to try.
Well, yeah, nobody's given up, that's for sure. So, Jeremy, take us through the grid right now and show us how they'll line up. Some interesting qualifying. I look at the 34 there in 3rd, a great run for them.
Yes, indeed, and there will be 17 cars for this race. Most of them are the latest specification of LMP3 cars. There are a couple of LMP3 2 cars, which is the older generation car. Starting at the back of the grid in car number 6 is Dan Goldberg for Performance Tech Motorsports. That car won the most recent race at VIR. Unfortunately had a faulty sensor in the engine during qualifying yesterday, so it did not set a qualifying time. Also at the back of the grid is car number 61, which will clinch the P3-2 championship today for Conquest Racing with starting the race. Danny Cope will start that car. It's also at the back there because George Stakos, the co-driver, had a big crash yesterday in practice. 15th position on the grid is Bruce Hamilton in car number 60, that's the Wolver Racing Ligier. In row 7 of the grid is Steve Scullen, car number 46, the CT Motorsports Duquesne, alongside the D Motorsports Ligier, car number 15, that's Mike Watt, local driver. He is the fastest of the 2 P3-2 cars in qualifying yesterday. Joe Robillard will start car number 43, the Robillard Racing Duquesne, in the 12th position. Alongside him is Jason Rabe in the 47 Motorsports Duquesne, car number 74. His teammate John Brownson in car number 47 will start 10th, alongside Alan Bryn-Jolson in the Volt Racing with Archangel Ligier, that's car number 7. Row 4 is Terry Olsen. Car number 3, the Junior 3 Racing Ligier. His teammate, car number 33, Ari Balog, will start alongside in 7th. 6th position on the grid, Brian Thenis in car number 17, the O'Gara Motorsport with US Racetronics Ligier, alongside the Mueller Motorsports America Duquesne D08. Car number 22 is CR Cruz. Second row of the grid on the outside, Keith Grant, car number 40, the JDC Motorsports Duquesne, alongside another Duquesne. His best qualifying performance of the season for Conquest Racing JMF Motorsports in car number 34 is Antoine Comeau. But on the front row is our 2 championship contenders. Josh Sarchet in car number 54, the MLT Motorsports Ligier will start second. But on the pole position, again, for Mueller Motorsports North America, in car number 21 from Germany is Moritz Kranz.
So the race has started, Jeremy. A problem for the 46 on the back straightaway. Steve Scullin behind the wheel. And again, we saw the 15 with a problem. All he's trying to do is get a little bit of wheel spin in the back to heat up those Michelin tires with that 450 plus horsepower in the V8 in the back of these LMP3 machines. But as cold as the tires are, as damp as the track is, get the wheel spin, the car slides to the outside. Now, the clock started, and it's not because of this incident that we didn't go green and are racing. It's because the officials know how cool it is, and they want to give the competitors a few more laps to try to find some temperature, learn the racetrack where the damp areas are before they turn them loose under green, trying to avoid any situations like we just saw for Steve Scullin in the 46.
Yeah, that's right. And I think he's taking the rear wing off that car, so that's going to be, if not the end of that car's race, it's certainly going to require a pit stop to replace the rear wing and see if we can get it going again. So that's most unfortunate for Steve Scullin and his very talented co-driver Scott Huffaker, who is a youngster with a huge amount of potential. In fact, Scott Huffaker, even though he's just 21 years of age, back in 2019, he was one of the class winners in the Petit Le Mans in an LMP2 car. So a very, very talented young man, and hopefully he's going to get a chance to show that in the latter stages of this race.
Yeah, a lot of talent in this field, that's for sure. Dan Goldberg behind the wheel of the number 6 entry. He and his co-driver Rasmus Lind, they won the last race at VIR, but it was not without drama. Jeremy, you remember this spin, turn 10, up on 2 wheels. The car comes back around 360 degrees, and Rasmus Lind, I asked him yesterday, I said, at what point in time did you open your eyes during that spin? He said, no, they were open the whole time. And all joking aside, he did a spectacular job. The crew does have a sense of humor. This weekend, there are arrows on the airbox on top of that number 6 pointing up. It says this side up on them, and underneath the car on the bottom of it, which you cannot see, hopefully, it says, if you can read this, Rasmus is driving.
That's pretty funny. There is a great sense of humor down there. It's a super family-backed team, that Performance Tech Motorsports, with the O'Neills there, Gwen and Brent, who run that team, and it's a super atmosphere. And that was an amazing performance. I tell you what, if Rasmus Lind doesn't make it as a racing driver, he'd be as a stunt driver, he's going to have a big future ahead of him. You know, with that spin, it only cost him 2 seconds on that lap. It didn't even cost him a position. Absolutely amazing. And then, of course, at that race, this car had to start from the back because they had a mechanical problem in the qualifying and came up, and despite that spin, went on to win the race. So perhaps that bodes well for the number 6 car this weekend.
What gives you an idea of how hard the hit was when he came back down on all fours, it broke the sway bar connectors on both ends of the car. So the front sway bar and the rear sway bar both were broken. So he drove the rest of the race without that tighter roll control that the sway bars give you. He said the car was a handful in the high-speed stuff. But if you're a fan of IMSA Prototype Challenge Racing, and why would you not be, you'll remember Rasmus Lind made a move on leader Stephen McAleer in what's known as Oak Tree on the final lap, and he said the only reason I was able to make it slowest speed corner on the racetrack and with the sway bars disconnected, I had excellent mechanical grip. It was the only end of the racetrack where the car really worked well, and I used that to my advantage, and certainly he did. He brought home the victory. They're going to have to load the 46, Jeremy, onto a flatbed, it looks like, or perhaps just pull him around, get him in the right direction. The rear wing off of the 46. And this is just how quickly it happens.
Yeah, it's a real shame for Steve Scullin there. Just tried to light up the tyres, get some heat into the rear tyres. Unfortunately, just one side of the car gripped and the other didn't, which is somewhat surprising on the straight there, and just turned him square left into the wall. So most unfortunate for Steve Scullin. And you know, it's just kind of one of those things that happens to you at some stage on a damp track like this. There's varying degrees of grip on the different parts of the racetrack, and clearly the right-hand rear wheel had grip, but the left-hand side didn't, and so the car just swapped ends on him. And it looks like that's going to be perhaps the end of his race before it's even started, and that's a great shame because this team missed the most recent race at VIR and looking to have a good strong running here to finish off the season at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta.
And they've had some good finishes. They started out the year well with a top 5 finish at the Roar down at Daytona and had some good runs in the top 10, but it just gives you an idea as you look at this racetrack. You can see areas that are very dark in the middle of the straightaways and areas that are light. Those light gray areas are where it's dry. The dark gray areas are where it's still damp, and I think that's what caught Steve Scullin out. And you said it, Jeremy, it's like one side of the car gripped up, the other didn't. And when you see these patches of moisture on the racetrack, you can see how that could easily happen. It's going to take a while for it to dry up as well. The sun will be bright, and that will certainly help things, but it's going to take a while as parts of the racetrack, the back straightaway where they're trying to get Steve Scullin's stricken number 46 off the racetrack, it's still in shade.
Yeah, and very, very chilly this morning indeed. And you talk about that grip, the levels of grip on the rear end of the car. I remember a race back at Silverstone, way back in the 70s. It was a standing start. The car was on the grid. Unfortunately, some oil had leaked out underneath one of the rear wheels on the grid. And as the driver accelerated away at the drop of the green flag, as it was in those days, actually drop of the Union Jack flag in those days, the car just instantly swapped ends on the starting grid. He swapped ends, and it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. That vision will remain with me forever. But it just shows you that it can happen at the drop of a hat. Just one thing doesn't work in the way you think it's going to. All of a sudden, the car is pointing in the wrong direction.
Well, this is not what our pole sitter Maurice Krantz wanted to see. These extended laps under yellow. He's saying, "Let's go, guys." And the reason is he needs to try to get away from the 54. He's not going to have as much time if we had done the full 1 hour and 45 minutes race. And so he wants to get going, wants to get this thing underway. His championship hopes lie in getting that 21 out front, handing it over to Ugo de Wilde and seeing the 21 cross the checkered flag first. But right now, those opportunities, those laps ticking away. And for Dakota Dickerson and his teammate Josh Sargé behind the wheel of the 54 right now, second place would do just fine. So they're more than willing to watch the clock roll.
Yeah, that is true, but by the same token, this is a 1 hour and 45 minute race, and what this full course caution will help with is the fuel consumption and the timing of the pit stops, because the Ligiers, they can do maybe 54 minutes or so on a tank of fuel under green flag conditions. That's about exactly halfway through this race. So with these caution laps and therefore using less fuel, that will just widen that pit stop window just a little, well, a fair bit actually at this stage, because we've already had 3 laps, almost 4 laps under caution, and we've burned up nearly 8 minutes, over 8 minutes of this race. So that will help with that pit stop window and just give them a little more leeway as to when they can make what they hope to be just one pit stop during this 1 hour and 45 minute race.
And those pit stops, there is a minimum pit stop time, 105 seconds here at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. So from the time you cross the pit in timing loop to the pit out timing loop has to be 105 seconds, that minimum time, and you want to cut it as close as you possibly can. And they do that because it helps limit the cost of running these cars. You don't need a full pit crew there to change 4 tires and put fuel in. You don't need the fueling rig. You just need to be able to take the time to get it done. And so it's one of those things, I shouldn't say the fueling rig, that you need to have, but you don't need all the air guns. You're not have a full crew to do the 4 tire change. And so with that minimum pit stop time, Jeremy, it really helps save some cost.
It really does, very much so. And that minimum pit stop time is only if you refuel the car. If you come into the pits for any other reason, even to change drivers or even change tires or do anything else, then there isn't a minimum pit stop time. But if you refuel the car, then yes, you have to be, from the moment you come into the pits to the moment you leave it, there has to be a minimum of 105 seconds. We see the number 15 car now coming onto the pit lane. This car qualified back in 13th position on the grid. This is Mike Watt, local driver from the Atlanta area, and we saw him spin on the first warm-up lap, didn't we? But he's clearly caused a little bit of damage to the nose of that car, so they're going to come in and have a look at it and then send it back out again. And seeing as the field is still under caution, they should be able to replace the nose if that's what they want to do, or whatever else on this car, and still remain on the lead lap before the start of this race.
Yeah, now's the time to get it done. And you look at the 15 car sitting there on pit lane. It's a Ligier. It's the JSP3 because that's last year's, the older model car, runs in the P3-2 category. Only 2 P3-2 cars running this weekend. The 61 driven by George Stakos, Danny Koch out there as well, and the 15 fighting for honors in P3-2. We speak of 2, Jeremy. There are also 2 chassis manufacturers out there, Duquesne chassis and the Ligier, and you can tell by looking at the nose on those cars which is which. The Ligier, a slightly rounder center section on the nose. The Duquesne, just a little bit more squared off, a little bit more narrow.
Yeah, and they do seem to be pretty closely matched, but they do make their speed in slightly different areas. They have different strengths and weaknesses, if you like. And the Duquesne tends to be a little bit more slippery. It gets down the straightaways just a little bit faster. But from accounts I hear, the Duquesne is perhaps 3 or 4 kilometers an hour, or miles an hour even, actually, I think, faster than the Ligier on the straights. But the Ligier has a little bit more mechanical grip. It's quicker through the twistier sections on the racetrack. So it's going to be an interesting and intriguing contest, I think, between these 2 cars during the race. And so far as the effectiveness of each of them is concerned, there's 1 car of each on the front row of the grid. So clearly not much to choose on the overall pace of these cars between the Duquesne and the Ligier.
More than just simple bodywork being replaced there on the 15 as they're in pit lane. A couple of more changes, and why would you not do it? Now's the time to get it done while you're under full course caution. They'll get it buttoned up and get that car back on the racetrack. And Jeremy, we were talking about the grid. Maurice Krantz, I mean, just a spectacular job all year long. Every pole position opportunity he has taken advantage of. 6 poles on the season. Not at all uncommon to see the 54 up there, but hats off to the 34, Antoine Comeau. Good job of qualifying that Conquest Racing Duquesne in 3rd. That really shows the improvement, I think, that Comeau and Colin Mullin, his teammate, have been making behind the wheel of the 34 all season long.
Yeah, particularly Antoine. He's originally from Canada, but home now is Chicago, where he's a bond trader in the financial markets there. Yeah, he's not a professional racing driver. Colin Mullin is a youngster who certainly aspires to be a professional racing driver. And Antoine last season raced in the Indy Pro 2000 Championship, which is part of the Road to Indy. He's sort of kind of measuring himself up against some very, very talented young racing drivers who are clearly making careers for themselves, and gave a pretty good account of himself. He was regularly up amongst the top 10 or so in a very, very tight field. And this year, he's done some sports car racing in the past in kind of prototype cars, the Radicals in particular, which got a lot of time at the Autobahn Country Club, which is just south of Chicago in Joliet, Illinois. So he's driven these sorts of cars, but at this level in LMP3, it's taken him a little bit of time to get fully up to speed in that car, but certainly has done so this weekend. They came here and did a test a few weeks ago. He got more comfortable. They made some changes to the car to suit his driving style, and Antoine Comeau repaid that by qualifying this car 3rd on the grid, and that will give himself and Colin Mullin an excellent opportunity to challenge for race honours here this morning.
Lights off on the BMW safety car. Under yellow here at Road Atlanta, the final round of the 2021 season for IMSA Prototype Challenge. Brian Till and Jeremy Shaw with you. Championship on the line, and it's between the two cars up front. They'll go green this time by, and we'll get the championship battle underway with just about an hour and a half to go from here at Michelin Raceway, Road Atlanta. Maurice Krantz starts up front, qualified on the pole, but this will be a single file restart. Officials electing to stay yellow on the initial start because of a problem for the 46 and also the temperatures and the track conditions. But now it is go time. It is on, Jeremy, and Maurice Krantz under the flag, and we are racing at Road Atlanta.
Yeah, and running at those slow speeds, it's really not going to have given them much opportunity to build any heat into these tires. So even now, even though they've been on the racetrack for 15 minutes already, those tires are still pretty cold. It's still going to be pretty tricky out there for the first stage of this race. It's going to take, as you said earlier on, another at least 3 or 4 laps now to build the proper heat and temperature into those tires, so they're working to their optimum capabilities. And at the moment, Maurice Krantz is under pretty good pressure here from Josh Sarche in that car number 54. These are the 2 championship contenders, of course. At this stage in the race, you've just got to keep it clean. Don't make any mistakes and end your championship aspirations in the early stages.
And there is no let up for any of these drivers. This racetrack, 2.54 miles, will change literally every lap. You can see the darker pavement on the back straightaway where the shade has been covering the track. Sun not able to get to it just yet. So it's still somewhat damp. And every lap these drivers go down this racetrack, it'll become a little bit more dry, have a little more grip. The Michelin tires will become a little warmer, a little higher tire pressure. The car will get better and better, but can you use it to your advantage? You've got to read all of those different variables if you want to take your car to the front.
That's exactly right. So what is the key in the early stages here? Patience. Don't try and push the envelope too quickly. Just settle yourself in, get the car up to where it needs to be in terms of its optimum capabilities, and then begin to push. But as I say that, look into the inside. There's Ari Balog trying to make a move on Brian Thenis heading into turn 1. That's not going to work this time around, but a good aggressive look there by Ari Balog in that Airbnb car number 33.
A lot of rain last night as a frontal system came through the Atlanta area, and so even though the racetrack will dry, the grass, that red Georgia clay to the outside, will stay damp probably for the next day or so. So if you get off the racetrack and into the grass, you're going to go for a ride. That is for sure, as Joe Robillard in the 43 under attack from the red and blue number 6, the Motel 6 entry. We talked about Dan Goldberg and Rasmus Lindh, their win last time out at VIR. They're trying to move forward after their problems in qualifying.
Yeah, and a poor first lap there for CR Cruz, the car number 22. He slipped all the way from 5th on the grid, all the way back to 11th, so he's got some work to do. CR Cruz is from Houston, Texas, actually originally from Dallas, and he was a very talented and aspiring young professional a dozen or so years ago, and then moved away from the sport. He's come back in again, primarily as a driver, coach, and even manager over the last few years. So we see whoa, that was close. A great save there for Dan Goldberg, who's been nice and sensible in the early stages, not pushing the limit too hard, making up for that mechanical problem in qualifying, but he held on to that car under braking. But for CR Cruz, he's been racing in the LMP3 Championship in Europe for the last 18 months or so. So he has got some racing under his belt, but this is his first race in the US in quite some time.
Dan Goldberg, that last lap, taking a look inside. Joe Robillard down into 10A, the left-hander under heavy braking. We see this a lot when the tires haven't quite gotten up to temperature yet. These drivers on the brakes hard, weight on the front of the car as it transitions to the front under heavy braking, and then perhaps a downshift just enough to break those rear tires loose. Dan Goldberg with a good job of saving the car right there under that heavy braking, trying to move forward. And Jeremy, you were talking about CR Cruz. He's run the last couple of years in Europe, as you said, in the LMP3 category, and he's done a lot of driving with Garrett Grist, who's also in the series today. Grist, 2 starts on the season, actually has the fastest race lap in both races that he's run. But the thing about CR, while he may not have been driving all these years, he's been the spotter for Will Power in the IndyCar Series and Roger Penske's team since 2008. And there is a problem. I'm not sure which Mueller Motorsports entry that is down the back straightaway, but off the pace, refired, trying to get life back in that V8 and back to pit lane. Who is it? It's the 22.
Yeah, CR Cruz, and so clearly had a problem on that first lap, and he doesn't seem to be on the power at all here, just coasting down the back straight toward the chicane, and doesn't seem to have any power on that car. The lights come on now, so maybe he has, yeah, maybe he's fired it up again. He's, I don't think he won't have lost a lap. He certainly has lost a lot of ground to the race leaders, and his teammate, meanwhile, Moritz Kranz, just resets the fastest lap of the race, 1:20.25, and to put that into perspective, his pole time from yesterday to qualify on the pole position was 1:16.3, so a full 4 seconds slower than that in the early stages of this race, with the tyres still coming up to temperature and not yet at full capabilities.
The lights off and then back on the 22. So you can also see CR Cruz in the cockpit of that car with the sun shining through that windscreen, looking down and to his left. That's where the dash is with a lot of the buttons and dials. And you've got to believe there's some type of a reset that he was trying to effect as he was coming down the front straightaway there. You could definitely see him looking down and left. The lights off on the 22. Then they came back on, indicating that it was back under power again. But I'm not sure that it's well, Jeremy. It looks to be intermittent at best.
Yeah, that's a great shame for CR, because as you say, he's been very much looking forward to racing again on American soil. As you say, he's been involved in the sport in all sorts, in just about every capacity possible, except for driving for quite a few years. And then he did get an opportunity to race in the European Series, and seems to have got some power again now. So it's one of those electrical gremlins again. Oh, they're so frustrating, aren't they?
I was laughing with one of the team members on one of the teams yesterday and said, why can't we just have carburetors again? It was really easy when they were cold. Yeah. You just hit them to make sure that there was some fuel down in the bowl and the floats were free. And now we've gone to such sophisticated machinery that the technology is fantastic when it works. It's like your cell phone or your laptop. When it's not working, it can be frustrating, but nothing frustrating right now for Moritz Kranz in the 21 as he leads by almost 3 seconds over Josh Sargent in the 54 as Cruz comes to pit lane. And for Moritz Kranz, all he can do is what he's doing right now, and that is run out front. You really can't think about where your competition is. He knows he has a job, just like every other race that you go to. The job is to win the event, and that's what Kranz is trying to do right now. He'll hand over to De Wilde at the pit stop, but doing all that he can do, staying out in front, and we'll let fate lay the cards where it may once we get to the checkered flag in an hour and 22 minutes.
Yeah, so still a long, long way to go in this race. The sun now rising a little bit and getting a little bit more temperature onto some of the racetrack, but turn one's there still in shade, and that's always a very daunting corner, even when you've got the full sun and lots of grip. It's a very, very fast corner, and you've got to be totally committed through there. So it's really tricky now, and this four-car train of cars here with Dan Goldberg at the back. He knows he's got a fast car. He knows he's got a super fast teammate in Rasmus Lind. That Motel 6 car is running at the tail end of that four-car train, heading up through the turn 5 and up to turn 6. The train is headed by John Brownson, Mr. Excitement, car number 47, with his teammate Jason Reid right behind him, then Joe Robillard, and then Dan Goldberg. And Goldberg knows he's faster than these guys, but he also knows, as we talked about earlier on, patience. He's got to be patient. He can't afford to throw it off the road. He nearly did that under braking at the chicane a few laps ago. He was lucky did a good job, let's say, to get that car back under control and not lose any smooth ground. But now he's just got to make sure that everything is working perfectly and pick his point and time to make that the first of the passes that he wants to make to move up the field.
With the cool temperatures, the evaporation's not happening as quickly as some of these drivers would like it, as that four-car train heads down the front straightaway into turn 1, 9, 10, 11, and 12 is the running order. The third car in the line there, Joe Robillard in the 43. Stephen McAleer shares the 43 with Joe Robillard. And talking to that team yesterday and then again this morning, just had a handling issue with it, especially in the high-speed stuff where the car felt like it was very secure and then would snap loose, snap oversteer, the taillights trying to get to the front. And that very unsettling around this racetrack in particular, especially in places like turn 12 onto the front straightaway. They think they were just too low, and the car was actually bottoming out in some of the heavy braking zones in the compression areas like turn 12. So hopefully they've gotten a handle on that and have a little bit more tame mount to do battle with here, as Dan Goldberg flashing the lights in the number 6 at the 43 of Robillard just in front. And really that 4-car train looks almost like it did last time by.
It does, doesn't it? And you talk about the ride height on the car and the bottoming out in these cool temperatures at the start of the race. When we talk about building pressure into the tires, that effectively pumps up the tires a little bit more, so it does give you a little bit more ground clearance. So the early stage of this race, in these very cool conditions, the car is going to bottom out more than it would under warmer temperatures and warmer tires too. So that's another factor that these drivers have to take into account.
Another thing they have to take into account, and we talked about this, Jeremy, as I watched this battle continue around the racetrack, it's amazing to me that the track isn't drying more than it is, and it's still very damp. You see a very bright sheen of moisture off to the right side of the racetrack going into turn 5, as CR Cruz is going to come back on the track in the 22. But the racetrack's really not changing. And so when you think about Dan Goldberg trying to make a pass, the only place where the racetrack is really drying is where the cars run regularly on the normal dry line. So when you step off of that line in order to make a pass, you're kind of stepping into no man's land. That's where the grip is diminished. And so you're trying to get a pass done when your competitor has better grip than you do. And you've got to make sure you can make it stick, as Goldberg's going to try again on Robillard down into turn 10.
And that was a textbook pass there by Dan Goldberg. He gets it right down the inside, and he fully committed under braking there, braking as deep as he possibly can, completely alongside Joe Robillard at the turning point. Nothing Joe could do there other than cede that position with Dan Goldberg. So really, really nice pass there for the Motel 6 car up into 11th position. We've got 2 more targets ahead of him, and then there's an increasing gap of probably 4 seconds or so, almost 5 seconds, to Alan Brynjolfsson running ahead of this little pack of cars.
Well, and when you look at that pass that Dan Goldberg just executed, and I think about the 2 drivers in those cars, and I'm thinking age and treachery before youth and exuberance, as John Brownson a little bit of problem off turn 5, and he will be passed by his teammate Jason Rabin, the other 47 Motorsports entry. And what I mean by that, as far as the pass with Goldberg and Robillard, 2 gentlemen that have experience, let's say, in life, and they're willing to be patient. They know they've got good teammates to hand the car over to. You said it, Dan Goldberg's not going to throw that car away. He's going to make sure Rasmus Lind has a good mount. And for Joe Robillard, he knows Stephen McAleer's going to get it. They're out there, they're doing battle, but they're being smart, they're being patient. Sometimes that's hard to do when your age starts with a number 1. You know, for some of these young drivers.
That is most definitely true, and a new best lap there for our race leader Moritz Kranz, 1 minute 19.396. But Josh Sargent in 2nd position in that MLT Motorsports car, the championship leader. He went even quicker, a 1:19.350 for Josh Sargent. So that is the best lap so far. The lap times are creeping down slowly. Interesting, the last 4 or 5 laps, Moritz Kranz has not gone quicker than his previous laps, whereas Josh Sargent had been a little bit. And this time he turns his best lap of the race. In fact, 5, 6 different cars have set their best laps on this race. So now finally, there's 16 laps in the books and 10 laps after we went back to green. I think we're now seeing these Michelin tires really where they need to be in terms of their operating temperatures.
The race for the championship in IMSA Prototype Challenge continues from Michelin Raceway, Road Atlanta. Jeremy Shaw, Brian Till with you. And the championship on the line. Moritz Kranz out in front, leading the pack in the 21 Mueller Motorsports entry. 2nd in the championship, just 100 points shy of Dakota Dickerson and Josh Sargent as we entered the final round here at Road Atlanta. And he's doing all that he can to bring a championship not only to himself, but to the team, and he would share that with new co-driver who joined him at VIR. Behind the wheel of the 21 right now is Krantz. His teammate will take over and run to the finish, Hugo de Wilde.
A very talented youngster from Brussels in Belgium is Hugo de Wilde. He started off his racing career in Formula 4 open wheel cars, finished third in the Formula 4 Southeast Asia Championship back in 2017-18, and then he finished second in a very competitive French Formula 4 Championship the following season, and then moved up into the Formula Renault Eurocup. So again, he was on the kind of the fast track towards maybe Formula 1. It would have been his aspirations before switching his sights across to sports car racing a couple of years ago, and it will be Hugo de Wilde who takes over that car later on in this race. And we can see Dan Goldberg here finally, I think, getting a pass done on John Brownson heading into turn 7.
That move by Goldberg on Brownson forced Brownson to the outside of turn 7. It's given Joe Robillard a shot down the back straightaway side by side, but Brownson in that red and black 47 gonna have the inside line into 10 if he can stay there on the brakes, but Robillard goes deep, a little bit of lockup, just a slight puff of smoke, stays in position and will take over the position from John Brownson. So Goldberg moves forward, and so does Joe Robillard.
Yeah, so there are some positions changing out there certainly, and Dan Goldberg now, I think, you know, you'll admit he's made a few mistakes this season, which he probably shouldn't have made, but in the early stages of this race, he's done exactly what he needed to do. Keep that car clean, and then steadily work his way up the order.
Maurice Krantz leads Josh Sargé in second. Sargé doing exactly what he needs to do to bring a championship to MLT Motorsports, Dakota Dickerson, and of course Josh Sargé. And I look at the order right now, Jeremy. Sargé really in the catbird seat. They need to finish 5th or better. They're running 2nd, and he's got about 6 seconds on Antoine Comeau in 3rd, and he's about 12 seconds off of Krantz. He's in this, call it an island, on an island between 1st and 3rd. No one's around him, doesn't have to worry about traffic. Just focus forward, put the laps in, hand the car over to Dakota Dickerson at the stop.
Yeah, and for some reason there, Josh Sargé turned a very slow lap last time around at 1:22. Maybe there was some traffic that he had to deal with. It cost him a lot of ground there. All of a sudden, that gap between 1st and 2nd has extended out to 12 seconds. And 3rd place, Antoine Comeau, he didn't pick on that last lap either, 1:20.3, as opposed to Moritz Kranz's new fastest lap of the race, 1:08 for our race leader. But the gap between 2nd, 3rd and 4th are pretty much strung out now, with Josh Sargé ahead of Antoine Comeau in car number 34, then Keith Grant in car number 40, and Brian Thenis is doing a nice job in car number 17, 3rd prototype race. Got a lot of experience in the past, though, has Brian Thenis in that car number 17 for the O'Gara Motorsport US Racetronics team.
Find out how patient Josh Sargé is going to be. CR Cruz in the 22, the sister car to Maurice Krantz, back up to speed now and right in front of Sargé, and Josh knows he can't risk it to try to make a move. Why do you run 2 cars? Well, this is a reason why. CR Cruz not out there to block or impede. He's out there running after they had their mechanical problems taken care of. Just so happens that he's slowing down Josh Sargé in the process. That's okay. Sargé just needs to stay calm, Jeremy. But the problem is, I'm looking just back behind him, and I see Antoine Comeau in the 34.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with you there, quite frankly, because CR Cruz, having come out of the pits, he's way off the pace. He's still doing 1:22's last lap round. And when you're that far off the pace, when you're 4 laps off the lead, CR Cruz, as a race spotter, should know not impede drivers that are going for places. Yeah, he's your teammate. I mean, if you can run competitive lap times, no problem. And he certainly isn't weaving around necessarily. But Sargé doesn't want to make a mistake. And finally now I think he's got to run and hopefully we'll be able to make a move down here into turn 10. But no, CR Cruz is not making life easy here. And I'm not impressed by that, quite frankly. No. I just think that is poor sportsmanship from CR Cruz. And this is you don't just wave people past necessarily, but if you're not up to speed, I think you do. You have to respect the drivers you're racing with.
And that's what racing is all about. It's about respect. And here's the problem. It's now so obvious Antoine Comeau is there, Jeremy. Josh Sargent is going to need to tighten down the belts and get past CR Cruz, be a little bit aggressive and get it done, or he's risk having Comeau get by, and that's still okay. We talk about finishing 5th, but you don't want to just sit out there and give positions away. You need to be a little bit bold if you want to stay up there in the hunt. You can't be too relaxed. Now Sargent around the outside, Cruz to the right side of the road, lets both Sargent and Comeau by.
Yeah, I think he finally got the message there to move over. Now, in my opinion, he should have done that 2 or 3 laps ago. I was unimpressed by that. I like to see our Cruz. I've known him for a long time. As I said earlier on, he was a pretty talented youngster trying to make his move up the sport earlier on, but he's now finally done the right thing. He can settle into his own race and have some fun out there and let the championship contenders get on with it in their own right. But certainly that has enabled Antoine Comeau to move right up onto the tail of Josh Sargent. And I've got to give credit to Sargent there. His primary focus was not to make the pass on CR Cruz, it was to make sure he didn't make any mistakes and cause any problems for this car, because all they need to do is finish in the top 5, the championship is assured. So if they're second, if they're third, that's just fine in terms of the big picture, which is winning this IMSA Prototype Challenge Championship.
I'm sure the crew on the radio with Sargent reminding him of just that, but sometimes, Jeremy, when you back off that little bit and you want to, quote, take it easy a little bit and not force anything, you kind of lose that racer mindset and you're not on the edge as you should be. And it's sometimes easy to make a mistake when you kind of are pedaling back just a little bit. Speaking of pedaling back, Cruz, the mechanical issues seem to come back as he rolls down the hill between 3 and 5. The lights went out, got it reset, got it refired. Engine back under power, the lights back on, and Cruz now back underway again. But that mechanical gremlin, whatever it is, seems to still exist in the 22.
Yeah, it does, isn't it? And that's most unfortunate for that team, certainly. But we've still got some good battles going on out here. There's Joe Robillard still right behind the number 6 car of the Dan Goldberg, who is lap car, isn't it? They can move there on. Is that Bruce Hamilton's car? New colours on that car.
Yeah, new colours on the 60.
For
problem for the 17.
No, he stuck it in the gravel.
Yeah, and once you're in the gravel, you're there. You're not getting out without some help, and that, I would imagine, will bring out a full course caution, as Brian Thena's having a great run going and now dropping rapidly down the order as each car goes by, stuck in the gravel. They will have to come and get him. And a lot of people go, well, gravel's such a pain, it brings out full course caution, so on and so forth. But if you come across that rise and go to the brake pedal and it's not there, and or the throttle stays on the floor, you've got some kind of a mechanical problem. That expanse of gravel out in front of you at the end of the braking zone is a pretty welcome sight.
Yeah, it certainly is, and it certainly is a lot. There's a lot more good than bad from gravel traps, no question about that. And Brian Thena's just locked up the rear brakes a little bit there, and around that car goes into the gravel. Unfortunate for him, he wasn't able to go again. The gravel there is right on the edge of the racetrack, and if you're going to go in backwards, the car is going to get bogged down. If you happen to go straight into that, you potentially got an opportunity to gingerly drive through the gravel, and if you don't apply too much power to the rear wheel so it kind of digs into the gravel, maybe you can get across the other side. But when you're going backwards, no chance, and that's a shame for him. So this, of course, is brilliant news for Josh Sargent and the MLT Motorsports team and everybody else, because now what had grown out to be a gap of 21 seconds on the last lap between Moritz Kranz and Josh Sargent and the rest, with Antoine Comeau hanging on to Josh Sargent in those last couple of laps. That gap is now going to be completely reduced, and we are, 39 minutes in the race, so an hour and 6 minutes remaining. I think this is a little bit early in order to come in and make your pit stop and still make it to the end of this race without needing a splash of fuel in the late stages. So we'll have to see what happens here now, who comes in and who does not.
Well, the car on pit road right now is the 22. We saw the problems early. Oh, what happened there? As Brian Thenis had been pulled out of the gravel, when he started to pull away, something, I don't know if the toe strap was not released yet. No, it wasn't. And they're trying to tell him to stop, but he doesn't see them and pulls away, and the toe strap takes off part of the bodywork. I would imagine that it's done some damage to the hookup point as well. Thenis underway. But, you know, that strap pulling back across there could have done damage to the suspension as well, but certainly damaged the left front bodywork.
Yeah, and Brian Thenis, that's a shame. He was doing a really nice job there, holding down fifth position under intense pressure from Ari Baylor there all the way through that first stint. And Brian Thenis has been, the last several years he's been driving in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Series, had quite a bit of success there, particularly as an AM driver. Whoops, there's a replay of what happened to Brian as he tried to rejoin the exasperation of the safety team, AMR safety team. And great news, by the way, this week that the American Medical Response and Global Medical Response that is responsible for the IMSA safety team has renewed its association with IMSA, so we'll be back as the AMR safety team for at least the next 3 years. That's great news, because these guys and girls who are part of that AMR IMSA safety team are absolutely fantastic. They do a sensational job to keep the drivers safe, and that's really exciting. I think that they are back in action here for the next 3 years.
As a driver, knowing that you've got a safety team like that out there, it doesn't make you drive any harder, but it gives you some reassurance in the back of your mind that you will be taken care of. It's so important. You know, for Brian Thenis, he gets pulled out of the gravel, but with that sun shining through these windshields, you get a very good idea of where the driver sits. So Brian's sitting on the right side of the car, the opposite side of the car from where the safety workers are. And it's hard when you look down into that car from the right side. The panels come well down. If you look up to the left, it's kind of hard for him to see the safety worker's hand saying, stop, stop, stop. He's been pulled out. He thinks they've unhooked him, so he pulls away, and they're sitting there going, wait, 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 wait. And I just don't think he sees them, Jeremy, from his seating position and with the way the doors and the windows are on these prototype machines.
Yeah, exactly right. He certainly didn't do that on purpose, because he wouldn't have wanted to cause any damage to that race car, that's for sure. But he just wanted to get going again. He knew he'd lost one lap, because he was seeing all the leaders go past him. He didn't want to lose the second lap, so he wanted to get back in the fray as quickly as he possibly could. So he's able to do that, and that damage, they should be able to repair that without too much difficulty, I think. And I was talking about Brian, a lot of success in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Series, but way back he raced in Formula Atlantic. Probably raced against you, Brian, did he? In the old days in Formula
He's not
Atlantic.
That old. Lights still on the safety car, and with 1 hour and 2 minutes and change to go from Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, the final round of IMSA Prototype Challenge for 2021, and the championship in this hard-fought series yet to be decided. The pit lane is open, obviously, because the 21, the leader, has come to pit road.
Yeah, with 62 minutes to go. This is really interesting, who comes in and who doesn't, because I think if the leader comes in, the problem is they can come in now under yellow, they can take on their service with a minimum pit stop time of 105 seconds. They will not lose a lap. So they will be able to get that car refueled, get back onto the racetrack, still without losing a lap to anybody who elected not to pit. And I think there are 5 cars on the lead lap that did not pit this time around. But the bad news is, with 62 minutes remaining, and it'll be 60 and maybe about 57 or 8 when we go back to green, they're going to have to really save some fuel to get to the end of this race without requiring another splash of fuel in the late stages. So this is all that good work that happened so far as the team strategies are concerned, with that extended full course caution at the beginning of the race, has now been completely undone. These cars that are making their pit stops now are all going to be it's going to be a struggle for them. I think there's 6 cars that are on the lead lap have made a pit stop. Now they're going to be have to take great care with their fuel consumption for the remainder of the event.
So you probably have right around a minute to get the stop done. It's probably 35 seconds or so, the delta through pit lane. The crew's scurrying, but not a frantic pace like you would see on a WeatherTech Sports Car Championship pit stop. You know you've got that 105-second minimum pit stop. You should see, if the stops went well, you should see the blue and white 21 out first. The 54 should be out, but it's taken a little bit longer. They're going to drop back just a little bit, 1 position on the stop. Interesting, the 7 car moves forward. I would imagine Trent Hinman now behind the wheel, taking over from Alan Brynjolfsson.
Yes, indeed. All the driver changes will certainly have been made there, and they'll have the teams will want to make sure that these cars are absolutely brim full of fuel. And even then, as I say, they are going to have to save a little bit of fuel to get to the end of the race. They're not going to be able to run absolutely flat out the whole way. The thing about Road Atlanta, Brian, and you will know this as a driver who's had success here at the pass, that downhill run into the chicane at turn 10A, you can lift off very, very early there, going down that straightaway, and still carry that same speed all the way down into the braking area. By lifting off early, that is how you save fuel in these cars.
Well, and you can do it between 3 and 5 as well, Jeremy. Any of the downhill areas, you can get that coast going, get off the throttle a little bit, let momentum, let gravity pull you down the hill and save that little bit of fuel. The thing that's important is these drivers know from the get-go that they need to save a little bit. And we talk about that a lot in endurance racing. Don't tell me with 10 minutes to go in my stint I need to save fuel. Yeah. It's too late at that point. If I'm getting in the car and I need to save, let me know now, because I can save a smaller amount per lap over more laps and still have the fuel save that I need. If you need me to do it in the final 10 minutes, I've got to save a massive amount in a lap, and that is hard to do without losing a massive amount of time.
It certainly is, and for 3 of these teams, number 3 of Terry Olsen, number 74, which is Jason Rabe, number 47 of John Brownson. They've all elected to stay out. They stayed out 1 more lap. They're still on the lead lap. They were running 3rd, 4th, and 5th. They now have come onto pit lane while the caution is still underway. So they will be able to get back onto the racetrack, I think, without losing a lap. But quite likely, they will be going back to green this time around. So they might not have caught up with the field by the time the green flag waves. So that's kind of the risk you take by doing that 1 extra lap. It'll give them an extra couple of minutes worth of fuel. Could be critical in the later stages of this race. So we'll have to wait and see. The lights are still on the safety car as they're headed down the back straight away. So maybe this little ploy here will work in their favor. If we don't go back to green this time around, then those 3 cars will be able to get out on racetrack and haul up to the back of the field before we get back to green. And like I say, there's extra, 2.5 minutes for the safety car behind the safety car last time around. That could work out into their favor. So the 2 cars that have not yet stopped are Keith Grant, car number 40, and car number 33, Ari Balog. The problem for them, of course, now, unless there is another full course caution fairly soon, they are going to, when they make their pit stop, they're going to have to make it under green. And almost certainly will go a lap down. Okay, so they're coming in now, and they're very fortunate, I would suggest, that the safety car did not come in that time around. I don't know why it didn't, because the track seemed to be clear, the safety team was out of the way, but we have not gone back to green, and that is going to give now the opportunity for the number 40 car and the number 33, Keith Grant and Ari Balog, to make their pit stops and be on the same sequence of everybody else, but crucially, with 4 or 5 minutes more fuel for the closing stages of this race. So when this is done, now everybody has made their pit stop, except for number 17, actually, which got its lap back because they did not pit when the other leaders did. So it's back on the lead lap. It's car number 17, I believe. Or is it? I have to wait and see until they all come past. No, maybe it isn't. But they were hoping to get back on the lead lap and then make their pit stop. But everybody else, I think, has made a pit stop right now. And so Hugo de Wilde in car number 21, having taken over from Maurice Krantz, he has retained the lead of the race. In second place now with a big jump, having come into the pits in the 7th position, Trent Hindman in car number 7. That's going to be really interesting to see him charge in the later stages of this race. A great pit stop by that number 17, the Volt Racing with Archangel guys who got that car out in second place ahead of the championship leader Dakota Dickerson in third. And his fellow former Team USA scholarship winner, Colin Mullin, is taken over from Antoine Comeau in car number 34 in the 4th position. And then Rasmus Lind, the winner last time out in car number 6, the spin and win Swede, is in 5th position in that Motel 6 entry.
55 minutes to go from Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta to crown a champion in IMSA Prototype Challenge competition for the 2021 season. Lights still on the BMW safety car as they lead the field around down the back straightaway. And interesting, we talk about saving fuel and coming in at the very beginning of the window. Obviously, for the 40 team and the 33, they didn't feel that they could make it. So who was right and who was wrong, Jeremy? We'll find out in 55 minutes, maybe a little bit less, whether the leaders, the 21, the 7, the 54, the 34, the 6, do they have the fuel to make it to the checkered flag?
Yeah, this is going to be really interesting in the latter stages of this race, and we'll see what sort of pace these guys can do. Dakota Dickerson in the past has shown that he's able to get really, really good fuel consumption on that number 54 car, and I think he's going to have to do the same here. But still, we're not going back to green. I don't know why this caution has been extended this far. Is there another incident out on the racetrack?
I've not seen one. And interesting, too, for the 40 car, you look at brothers Keith Grant, David Grant. They have qualified well all season. They've been in the top 5 every qualifying. In fact, only one out of the top 2 rows. So in the top 4 most of the time, with the one exception. But what they haven't been able to do is parlay that into the same type finishes. They were 3rd at Daytona, but then an 8th, a 4th, a 13th, and another 8th. So that strategy side of things, perhaps, and a couple of mistakes by drivers from time to time aren't getting them the finishes that they want. So are they rolling the dice here by coming in late, or are they doing the right thing and saying, hey, we're going to be able to run at full power to the checkered flag while these other teams may have to conserve a little bit? That strategy may have been the right one had we gone back to green a lap or so ago, but right now with this extended full course caution, all that's allowing the leaders to do, those top 5 cars, is continue to save fuel. And the longer we go, the more fuel they save. But the light's now out on that BMW safety car. We should be going green this time by.
Yeah, and I noticed on this lap that several cars have changed positions on the racetrack, so I wonder whether the reason for this caution being extended was that there was some confusion as to who should be positioned where on the racetrack relative to the other cars, and the race control just getting that sorted out. I'll try and find out a definitive answer on that one, but that's about all I can suggest at the moment. But as you say, the lights are out now, so we're going to go back to green, and this is going to be with 52 minutes remaining. So this extended caution period again is really going to help the cars that came into the pits earliest, because now they've got at least probably 3 less laps they would have otherwise had to do, 2 less laps probably than they would have had to do under green flag racing if it goes green all the way to the finish.
Brian Thinas must have gotten his lap back. He's the leader as they come down, not the leader in the order, but the leader on the racetrack. The lead goes to the 21 of Hugo de Wilde in the second car in the sequence, the blue and white number 21. Thinas has gotten his lap back, but he's got a long way to go to get back around. I still show that car is not pitting.
Yeah, that's correct. It hasn't pitted, and the reason it hasn't pitted is because of absolutely because of this, to try and stay on the lead lap before he makes his pit stop. But he's at the tail end of the lead lap, and unless there's another full course caution very, very soon, even if he is able to stay ahead of Hugo de Wilde when he makes his pit stop, he's still going to lose a lot of ground. So it's worth a try. If somebody else spins and calls a full course caution, then he will be able to go ahead of the race leader, run around to the back of the pack, and then make his pit stop, and he'll be good to go for Jacob Edson to take over that car for the final stages, still on the lead lap. But he definitely needs a full course caution. And so far on this lap, everybody seems to be nice and clean on this first lap of green flag racing.
Venus going to stay to the left side of the racetrack, and why would you not? He's got a known commodity underneath him, Jeremy. His tire's a little bit warmer. He knows the track. But DeWilde around the outside, he is gone. Trent Hinman next in the order to try to get past the red, white, and blue number 17.
Yeah, so heads up driver there by Ugo DeWilde, the youngster. And he's able to make that pass. Just 18 years of age is Ugo. Actually, not the youngest driver in the field. That would be Tyler Maxson from Bogart, Georgia, local driver making his debut this weekend, sharing the sister car to the race leader, the number 22 with CR Cruz. That car is running again now. Yes, it is running, but it's 6 laps off the pace. But Tyler Maxson making his debut this weekend. He's raced previously in the Mazda MX-5 Cup Series with some success, and also in the Michelin Pilot Challenge Series with IMSA over the last couple of years. A very talented youngster indeed.
Yeah, and a 2-time champion in SRO TC competition, both in TCA and TCR. But this prototype, the IMSA Prototype Challenge LMP3 machinery, a whole new ball game for Tyler Maxson. You said the 17-year-old out of Georgia. And a big weekend for him to be able to step into this prototype stage on a Petit Le Mans weekend here at Michelin Raceway, Road Atlanta. That is a big, big deal. They've not had things go their way, some type of a mechanical gremlin on that 22, but Maxson having a good showing, and he will take this and the experience that comes with it and move on down the line in his racing career. Talk about moving on down the line. The 7, Trent Hinman, not able to get past Venus and move forward. The 54, Dakota Dickerson right behind him. Dickerson, talk about young talent, Jeremy. He's fast and he's smart. That's how you win an F3 championship, an F4 championship. And he's trying to add an IMSA Prototype Challenge championship to his resume. He's got to be hyper smart right now. Know when to press, know when to relax a little bit. He'd love to get past Hinman in front of him in that bright number 7. The yellow bright Volt machine, but you've got to measure the risk and reward. The 60 just behind him, Tonise Kazmits, that bright orange 60, is not in it for position. So I'm sure he doesn't want to let Kazmits by because he feels like over the long run he's going to have a better car, and he doesn't really want someone else up there that could create a problem for him. But you got to really measure the risk reward once again and decide, you know, do I keep pressing forward and try to keep him back there, or do I let him go at some point in time?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's the conundrum that he faces now. And hats off here to Brian Cedars, doing a really good job.
Yeah.
He's not weaving around. He's not being defensive. He's doing some very good lap times, in fact, to keep himself there. At the first car 1 lap down, and Trent Hinman unable to make a pass there. But for Dakota Dickerson, his major worry now, I think, is that car behind him rather than the cars in front, because he knows how aggressive Tonise Kazmits can be and how fast Tonise Kazmits can be. As we see a spin there for that's Garrett Grist, who was one of the contenders we're looking to win this race in that number 33, taking over from Ari Baylog. Let's have a look, see what happens. Oh,
there's that rear lockup again.
Yeah.
We've seen that at least 3 times. These cars seem to be very sensitive towards that final downshift, perhaps in the braking zone. You can see the 33 had a little bit of steering in, beginning to change directions to enter the corner. And perhaps that last downshift just kind of locks the rear tires for just an instant. And then the rear wing wants to become the front wing. The back end of the car wants to head to the front, and that's where you've got to go to work and try to keep it back there. Grist with a good job not to spin, not to get into that gravel there in turn 10. He's back underway, but that's cost him time.
Yeah, it's a very good, very good point indeed there, Brian Till. It's a new fastest lap of the race, by the way, by Grist's teammate Mike Skeen, who's taken over from Terry Olsen in number 3 car, running in 6th position in this train of cars. He is now queuing up behind Brian Thielers. And now finally Brian Thielers heads to the pit lane. That's going to unleash Trent Hinman, Dakota Dickerson, Colin Mullin, Rasmus Lind, and Mike Skeen, all in a train of cars there behind him.
Well, and think about this for Dakota Dickerson, that bright orange number 60 just behind his orange, blue, and white 54. It's a liability and it's an asset. Tonys Kazmits is a lap down, so he's not fighting for position, but he's running a good pace, and that's really important because he's just in front of the 34 of Colin Mullin, and that's going to keep Mullin, who is in it for position over Dickerson, it's going to keep Mullin at bay for a little bit. So Dakota doesn't really have a problem with the 60 behind him, I don't think, Jeremy. As long as he's running a good pace right there and he's not pressuring Dakota too much, it's actually an asset for him as long as he can hold back the 34.
Pit stop for the number 74 there, Courtney Crone. Not quite sure why that would be. She was running in the 9th position, having taken over from Jason Rabe in the second of the 47 motorsports entries. Her teammate Daria Cangalozzi was just ahead of her in the 8th. No, it's reset itself now. She's not trailing in the pits. That's weird. Not quite sure what happened there. So maybe a timing glitch, but as we see the race leader there, Hugo de Wilde, last time around reset the new fastest lap of the race, 1:18.5. Here he goes across the line to complete lap 35. Quicker again, a new fastest lap, 1:18.0 for our race leader. It's a spin for number 61 car. That's George Stakos in the Conquest Racing entry. That car, by starting the race today, George Stakos and Danny Koch have clinched the LMP3 championship for the older generation cars. There's a big spin there at turn 2 and 3, but no harm, no foul. He's going to be able to continue without losing, well, actually without even losing a position, because that car already is a couple of laps down to the rest of the field.
Seemed to be a little off the pace as he was trying to get it refired, perhaps just the engine loaded up a bit. The P32 entries do not have traction control. The P31 entries do. They have a little more horsepower and a rudimentary traction control system, but as cold as it is right now, and like we talked about, the dampness on the racetrack, especially without traction control to aid you coming off the corner, 450 plus horsepower, easy to light up those rear tires and just bring the rear end around. I think that's what happened to Stakos. Hugo de Wilde out in front, 44 minutes to go in the final round of the 2021 IMSA Prototype Challenge Championship. De Wilde taking over from Maurice Krantz. Krantz on the pole 6 times every race this year. He's qualified that 21 up front. And we came into the weekend looking at the driver order, Jeremy, and I thought it kind of strange that Krantz would qualify and de Wilde would finish, because I think of Maurice as the more experienced, the faster driver there, and probably only because we've seen him all year long, and de Wilde just debuted at VIR. But you talk about putting in fastest laps, that's what the 21 has been doing. That's the answer as to why de Wilde will finish in the 21.
Yeah, indeed. Because he's just set fast lap race, you said 1:17.9, but Trent Hidman in second, but just gone faster again, 1:17.6 then for that Ligier number 7 in second position. 3 seconds behind, so he's got some work to do to catch up with Hugo de Wilde, but he's charging hard, and Dakota Dickerson is now running in, be relieved somewhat lonely by LMP3 standards. IMSA Prototype Challenge standards, 3rd position. He's got about a second clear in front of him and a second clear behind him to Colin Mullin and the rest of the pack behind him. So the track is warming up now. The track is pretty much dry. There's still some damp spots out there for sure, but the lap times are continuing to improve.
Colin Mullin in the 34, a great season. He's won a championship with Mackay Stevens in SRO sports cars. You think about his rise through the ranks here in North American motorsports, and I know you've had a part of that. Team USA has had a part of that, Jeremy. And Colin Mullin showing that he can get the job done, not only in a GT-based machinery, but in prototypes as well, sharing that 34 this weekend, as he has for much of the season with Antoine Cameau.
Yeah, indeed. So, yeah, really talented young guy from Danville in California. It's in the Bay Area. Colin Mullin, just 19 years of age. Even now, he was a Team USA scholarship winner a couple of years ago, and has been driving in sports cars. He's made his said he saw out early. He wanted to be a top sports car driver. He's got that opportunity this year we've driven various cars over the past. He won a championship in the SRO series last year with Andretti Autosport as teammates with Jared Andretti. Now he's got an opportunity with John Farrow from JMF Motorsports and Conquest Racing West to drive this, not only this P3 car, but also a GT4 Mercedes as well. And you say he and Mackay Stevens actually took that series by storm the latter part of the season. And Colin Mullin doing a nice job in this car as well, currently running in the 4th position. This battle just behind them, a little bit further back behind them. David Grant in car number 40 and Garrett Grist making up for that spin in car number 33. And I talked about Courtney Crowe making a pit stop. I think she must have done. Maybe it was a penalty. I didn't see a reason for a penalty, but I think it might have been a penalty for number 74 machine of Courtney Crowe. But she is still on the lead lap in the 11th position as we see a spin there for Tony Skazimets. And by the way, the reason that caution was extended, I heard from race control Todd Snyder, the race director, kind enough to get back to me by text to confirm that the reason for the extension of that caution period was because basically the drivers didn't know how to figure out the class split. Before we go back to green flag racing after full course caution, 2 classes are split. So the P3-1 cars will be ahead of the P3-2 cars, and there was some confusion there as to how that should be completed. That's why the caution was extended. But now we're clean and green, and the lap times are just continuing to come down.
David Grant in the bright yellow 40 streaks towards turn 6. The yellow and orange just inside. Garrett Grist, the 33, gets the job done. Grist, we talk about it, so much experience, fast race laps, the only 2 races that he's run in the IMSA Prototype Challenge Series this year. He obliterated the rest of the field as far as lap times went in the race and owned the fast laps from those 2 events. A lot of experience in LMP3 machinery in the Asian Le Mans Series, European Le Mans Series, Michelin Le Mans Cup over in Europe, and he's putting that experience to good use behind the wheel of the 33 today.
Well, he is, and you know, apart from that spin a little while ago, you know, he's now got his focus back again. You know, once again, even drivers with the experience of Garrett Grist, who again was a very impressive. Making a move up the open wheel ranks for several years before, again making his switch to sports car racing, and now he's got a clear track. He's got that spin out of the way, and he's going to focus forward and try and catch up to that leading group in front of him. But in the meantime, it's the number 7 car has been charging along here, trying to reduce the deficit to the race leader, and he's done so with a very quick lap that time around. Trent Hinman closed right up all of a sudden onto the tail of the race leader.
A second and a half quicker Trent Hinman in the 7-volt entry was than Ugo de Wilde in the 21. De Wilde leading, trying to keep the championship hopes alive for Maurice Krantz, who he shares that car with. But the closer Hinman gets, the more difficult that task becomes to hold on to the championship. 21 really needs to win. The 54 needs to finish worse than 5th in order for the 21 and Maurice Krantz to take home a championship. If Trent Hinman gets by in the 7, that is a big, big problem for Maurice Krantz and Mueller Motorsports.
Yeah, it certainly is. And but even now, I mean, with the number 54 car running there, in the 3rd position, he's got a couple of seconds in front and behind him now, so he's just Dakota Dickerson. He's going to manage his fuel, make sure he's got enough fuel to get to the end of this race. He's going to take no chances. 3rd place finish will be just fine, irrespective of whether number 21 car wins or not.
For de Wilde, all you can do is what you always do: head down, go try to win the race. That's why you're here. It's a very different outlook that Dakota Dickerson and Josh Sargé had coming into the weekend. Yes, if you can win the race, that's great. The big trophy's always good, but there's a bigger one that awaits them if they can finish in the top 5. So they've got a little different perspective on this race. For everyone else, they want to end the season on a high note. The number 6, Rasmus Lind, wants to keep all 4 wheels on the racetrack this weekend and see if they can find another victory. For the 7 of Trent Hinman, Alan Brynjolfsson, they won at Sebring in round 2 of 2021. They would like to return to victory lane. And for Colin Mullin in the 34 out of Conquest Racing, well, they would like to bring a victory to Conquest. That would be their first in IMSA Prototype Challenge competition. He and Antoine Cameau would like to celebrate. So a lot of good stories in the top 5 right now, and for Mike Skeen in the number 3, just outside the top 5. He could be there relatively soon because it looks like he's closing down a little bit on Rasmus Lind.
Yeah, that's right. It's interesting, isn't it, how the relative pace of the cars and Colin Mullin are really struggling to stay ahead of Rasmus Lind, who's getting very, very aggressive there. Colin Mullin getting a little bit defensive. And meanwhile, a new fastest lap of the race has been set by Garrett Grist on that last lap at a 1 minute 17.437. As I say, that across the line goes Ugo de Wilde, our race leader. He resets fastest lap at 1:17.290. So time's continuing to come down.
For de Wilde, he must have gotten caught in traffic, and that's what closed the gap down. But talk about closing a gap down. Mike Skeen right there, we said it, closing in on Rasmus Lind. A little mistake around the apex of turn 5 in that white and blue number 3, but he has been able to close down on the rear wing of Rasmus Lind, because Lind involved in that battle right now with Colin Mullin. They were side by side out of turn 10 the last time, and Mike Skeen just ate up the distance between them.
Didn't he? That was rather interesting to see how quickly he made up that time.
Skeen right there trying to become a part of this battle. 4th, 5th, and 6th on the track right now is de Wilde trying to pull and extend the gap to Hinman a little bit. He was able to do so again this time by, but the more this fight rages in front between the 6 and the 34, the white and black and red 34 of Colin Mullin in the Motel 6 entry of Rasmus Lind, the more Mike Skeen is going to be able to close. But and look at that, Jeremy. The 34 and the 6 were not side by side that time. They ran pretty much nose to tail on the preferred line. They were able to run good lap times. Skeen dropped back a little bit, but as soon as they start going side by side and get the battle intensified again, Skeen jumps right back into the fight.
He does. He doesn't seem to quite have the pace that he had at the beginning part of this stint, does he, Mike? Because he's hugely experienced, a really, really fast driver, and as he's shown on several occasions in these cars, driving with Terry Olsen here. Mike Skeen has already had a win in these cars last year. He and Terry Olsen already had a 2nd place finish this year, driving together, so he's certainly got the speed. This is a top team is Junior 3 Racing, car number 3 and number 33, which is Garrett Grist, just again reset the fastest lap of the race farther down the field. I think he's the last car on the lead lap now, is Garrett Grist, car number 33 in 9th position.
Colin Mullin out from underneath the Fox Factory Bridge one more time onto the front straightaway, and has been able to eke out maybe a car length over Rasmus Lind, but there's a real accordion effect that's going on, and I'm wondering if the handling in Mike Skeen's number 3 has gone away a little bit, I should say, especially in the high speed sections between 3 and 5. The exit of turn 5 is where he seems to have lost the most speed, and the 34 and the 6 sneak away through there. Dakota Dickerson, meanwhile, holding down the 3rd position, just a couple of seconds in front. You see him in the long shot as the cars head to turn 6. That gap beginning to close a little bit. And again, as Colin Mullin and Rasmus Lind run nose to tail, they're able to move forward. And in typical fashion, when 2 cars get side by side, not able to run on the preferred line, they lose a little bit. And I think they are closing down about a half a second a lap on Dakota Dickerson just in front.
Yeah, they certainly did on that last lap, didn't they? But Dakota Dickerson, he's still got a couple of seconds in hand over this trio of cars. And Colin Mullin now seems to have kind of settled down a little bit. He's pulled out a little bit of a gap this time around on the car behind him. But meantime, out in front of the field, Ugo de Wilde has got his head down too, and he's extended that lead. He was under increasing pressure there from Trent Hinman for several laps. He's now managed to count a little bit of it. 1.4 seconds was the lead as he crossed the line last time around. 1 minute 17.6 was his best lap. So that's about three or 4 tenths of a second away from his fastest. And again, track conditions still not ideal here. There's still damp spots on the racetrack. The racetrack is cold. It is difficult. If you have to slow down to pass a slower car, you can easily lose a lot of temperature in these cars, Brian, and that will make things tricky for maybe another half a lap or so until you can build that heat back again.
So the 54 car, Jeremy, Dakota Dickerson was 1.4 seconds slower that last lap than Colin Mullin and Rasmus Lind, and about 1.5 seconds slower than Trent Hinman. I don't know what happened on that lap, but this is about as far back as Dickerson can go. If Mullin and Lind were to get by, he would be 5th, and he'd have to deal with Mike Skeen that's back there. But I don't know if something is amiss on the 54 or Dakota Dickerson just made a mistake. But the last lap time was a 19.2 to the 17.8 of Colin Mullin behind him. What's it going to be this time? Dickerson back on pace and answers back with a 17.8. He's back on pace, so perhaps just a little bobble. But man, he really fell back to the 34 and the 6 of Mullin and Lind.
And we've seen this on a kind of a regular basis through this race, haven't we? For some reason or another. I think it's just because the track is so slick right now. I mean, there's very little grip out there. You've really got to finesse the car through the corners and keep everything where it needs to be in terms of temperatures and optimum capabilities of the car. And it's not easy. And all of a sudden, there is a race leader. He's come up behind. That is, which car is that behind? I think it's the Keith Grant car, isn't it?
I believe it's the 74.
Okay, yes, yeah, that's right.
You talk about easy. This is not easy. Hugo de Wilde needs to get by. He's got Trent Hinman directly behind him, and he had a hard time. I think it's indicative of the racetrack, like you talked about, Jeremy. You get offline and you kind of explore a little bit to try to go around somebody, as they now both have cleared Courtney Crone. It's difficult to do, and so sometimes you're not willing to take that risk with the unknown right there, and that really held up Hugo de Wilde. Courtney Crone didn't do anything wrong. She's out there doing the laps that she can do, but to take that risk and go around in some of those areas of the racetrack that are still damp makes it difficult, and that allows your competition to close right up. That's exactly what Trent Hinman was able to do. I think he got caught up just a little bit trying to get by her, and de Wilde was able to pull out another half second or so, but it just shows you the give and take of traffic around here. And like you were saying, you put a wheel wrong and you step out onto that area where there's not a lot of grip. A second, half a second and a half can go away pretty quickly.
It can, and again, it just shows that, how difficult it is out there. And the last lap of the race leader, 1:20.3, that cost him 3 seconds on that last lap, trying to find a way past Courtney Crone, who was still on the lead lap, by the way, in that 11, she's now not. So David Grant will be the last car on the lead lap in kind of a 40 in the 10th position. But as you say, Courtney was doing nothing wrong there. She's turning her lap times, and it was up to Hugo de Wilde to find a way past, which he finally was able to do with a good pass there down into turn 10, and then she didn't make life particularly easy for him, nor did she make life easy for Trent Hinman. So the gap between those two leaders stays pretty much the same, at around about a second.
You're not supposed to make it easy for anybody, right, Jeremy? You're out there racing, and Dakota Dickerson's now going to have to deal with Crone up the hill, and he doesn't want to waste a lot of time. You talked about it. 3 seconds is what the leaders lost trying to get around, and this is going to allow the 34 of Colin Mullin to get right back up there. Traffic gives and it takes away. Right now it's taking away. Look at Dakota Dickerson. Backs off a little bit on the way into the corner to see if he can get the run off, the momentum, and get by her. I'm not sure it's going to work. And Colin Mullin is now right there. Dakota Dickerson needs to get by, and Rasmus Lind, oh, and there's contact, and Mullin is around. Around and in the wall. That's at the exit of turn 6. And I don't know if Colin Mullin was doing the same thing that Dakota Dickerson did. It looked like he checked up a little bit to try to get a run, perhaps through 7. We'll take a look at it again. Lind looks to the inside, coming off the corner. Mullin gets loose, Jeremy. I think he just loses the back end a little bit. And Rasmus Lind had already committed back to the throttle.
Yeah, so it's definitely an assisted spin there, but the assisted spin, the number 6 car didn't do anything wrong in that instance. He was just it was just an unfortunate thing to do there. Number 34 car just got loose, as you say, going through that corner. Number 6 car was right behind, looking to have an opportunity to make a pass into 7, and all of a sudden that car slows right up, and he's unable to avoid the contact between the two of them. So quite extensive damage to the front of the number 6 car, but unfortunately it's worse for number 34. It's going to be out of the race as a full course caution again with 26 minutes remaining in this race.
Full course caution out again at Michelin Raceway Road at Atlanta. 26 minutes left to go in the 2021 IMSA Prototype Challenge Championship as a dejected Colin Mullin sits behind the wheel of the 34 in the fence at the exit of turn 6. Just a little bobble coming off the corner. Rasmus Lind could not stay out of the back of the 34. He had already committed back to the throttle, makes the contact. This is a good news, bad news situation for our championship leader, Dakota Dickerson. Here's a look again. Mullin turns in, maybe just a little bit offline.
Well, was there any contact going into 6th there from number 6 car? It's difficult to say from that angle. But certainly, you know, it's a strange place to get loose.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think there's a different camera angle there. I think if there was any contact, and it might have been, it would have been before that camera angle there that we just saw. Hard to say. Let's have another look from. Certainly very, very close, that's for sure.
I don't think so. I think what happens, Jeremy, is Colin Mullin's a little offline. He's just slightly defensive. He's not blocking. Yep. He's just a slightly offline. Remember, we've talked about the moisture that's still on the racetrack. You'll see it there in turn 6. And I think since he's just about a half a car width to the inside, he's got to tighten his hands a little more than he normally would through 6. And that little bit of additional steering, I think, just loosens up the back end of the car, coming off a little bit. And again, it's a very quick corner there. You're back in the throttle well before the apex. And I think Rasmus Lind had committed just about the time the traction went away on the back of the 34. And it just couldn't stay out of the back of him. But I say good news, bad news for Dakota Dickerson. The good news is there's a very fast car that was behind him that's not behind him anymore. The bad news is there's another fast car that's right behind him, although Rasmus Lind has some damage on the front end of the number 6. When this race restarts, he'll be right there behind Dakota Dickerson. Mike Skeen is there as well. Stephen McAleer is going to be joining in the fray because he'll be on the back of that train. We'll see if the 43 car has found the handle that they did not have in qualifying. So this is going to be a wild one with 24 minutes and 25 seconds to go in the 2021 season, and the championship is still not decided.
That's right, and the two guys who did not want to see this caution period are our race leader, of course, Ugo de Wilde, who was, he just actually set his best lap as we came up to that full course caution, 1 minute 17.22 for the race leader. He actually extended that lead to Trent Hinman out to just over 2 seconds again, having lost it during that lap traffic a little while ago. There is Colin Mullin disappointedly out of the number 34 car for JMF Motorsports and Conquest Racing West, but another strong run there for Mullin. Disappointing way to finish off the season. But as I say, for Ugo de Wilde, he just set his best up, so he was extending that lead. That lead has now gone away again. Trent Hinman is going to be right on his tail for the restart. Then between Hinman and Dakota Dickerson is that lapped car of Courtney Crone, who isn't quite on the same pace as the leaders, but doing a nice job there in the 10th position, 1 lap down. And then the other guy who didn't want to see that caution is Dakota Dickerson, the championship leader, because all of a sudden again, he's got Rasmus Lind and Mike Skeen and Stephen McAleer and Dario Cangilosi and Garrett Chris. And didn't want to see that caution. It's all nose to tail behind him.
Like I said, it was good news and bad news for Dakota Dickerson. The good news is there was a fast car that was right behind him that's now gone, but now the order's been filled in. The question is, what kind of handling deficiency, if any, will Rasmus Lind have in the number 6 Motel 6 entry? Significant damage to the front end of that car, and it looks like perhaps one of the dive planes, or that's, I think, what we call the cheese wedge that was actually off the back of Colin Mullin's car, just under the rear wing and out to the side where the taillights are on these Prototype 3 cars. You see what looks to be some type of a wedge. I think that's the wedge that's shoved into the front of the 6.
Yeah, that's going to be a real handful, particularly down through the S's and turn 5 as well. That's going to be really tricky for Rasmus Lind. But look, as we saw last time out of VAR, a little bit of adversity isn't a problem for this very gifted Swede. And we saw him do a masterful charge there, just 20 years of age, from Gothenburg in Sweden. He, again, Rasmus Lind, was one of the top contenders on the road to Indy, and will remain so, because he's second in both the USF 2000 Championship and Indy Pro 2000 Championships, behind Kyle Kirkwood, who he's won all 3 series now, including Indy Lights. Rasmus Lind, who made his Indy Lights debut towards the end of this year, and I believe is going to be running a full season next year at Indy Lights. So a really talented young man. To finish second to Kirkwood is no mean feat. He did both years as a rookie, so clearly he is very, very talented as well.
It's always frustrating to finish second, but when you finish second to someone like Kyle Kirkwood, you still have to understand you've done a very, very good job. It reminds me of our good friend and colleague Calvin Fish, Jeremy, who finished second in the Formula Ford 2000 Championship to someone named Senna back in England. You'll probably remember that.
Very well, yes. I was covering the series at that time, and then I always say that if Calvin had elected to remain in F2000 for another year rather than move up to F3 with Senna, then his career path might have been quite different, because when he got up into F3, Senna was just on another planet, and at that stage in their careers, Senna had one more year of car racing under his belt. Calvin had come straight out of supercarts into Formula 2000, Formula Ford 2000, whereas Senna, he'd done a year of Formula Ford 1600 previously, so he had a full year of racing experience under his belt. But Calvin, he's a heck of a talented driver. As you say, Senna, one of the all-time greats.
Well, and following him into Formula 3 was, like you said, probably not the career move that you wanted to do, stay and win a championship, but that's easy to say at this point in time. I once asked Calvin, I said, didn't you get frustrated? You finished second to him like 15 times. I think he beat him twice. I said, didn't you get frustrated? Did you ever want to take him out? And he said, mate, I could never get close enough.
He's doing himself a disservice, because he was often close. He was often close to Senna, that's for sure. And you say beat him a few times, but I mean, one of the all-time greats was Ayrton Senna, no question about it. Those were great years back then as well.
And a great weekend here at Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta. Fans have turned out in absolutely beautiful weather. It is
Bacon
cool.
Sandwiches.
And food on the grills. Smelled the campfire smoke in the air when I arrived at the track this morning, and it is just a great, great weekend. We're watching a championship unfold here with 19 minutes to go in IMSA Prototype Challenge from Road Atlanta. Championship leaders on the way in: Dakota, Dickerson, Josh Sargé in their number 54 MLT Motorsports entry, and for Uga de Wilde and Maurice Krantz in the 21, they are doing everything that they can do to try to wrest that championship away. But it is going to be a brand new race when we go back to green with just a little more than 18 minutes to go. And by the time the green flag falls again, it will be even less than that. Lights now off on the safety car, so it'll be green this time by about 18-minute sprint to decide the championship. You ran the previous 5 1-hour and 45-minute races, and the points got tallied and totaled, but it's still not over with. It's going to come down to these last 18 minutes here at Road Atlanta.
Yeah, and it's the sun. The sun is higher in the sky now. There's certainly a bit more temperature out there, but it's still in the 50-degree range, and that's pretty cold. And with these cars having run under the safety car for the last 4 laps, these Michelin tires will have lost pretty much all of their temperature. So again, it's going to be really tricky for these drivers at the restart run.
And a completely different mindset for all the cars up front. For Uga de Wilde, he needs to win. Trent Hinman wants to win. The 54, Dakota Dickerson, 4th in the order right there, wants a championship, and he needs to be careful, and he is being careful right now. He looks and sees the bodywork coming off the 6, but is he being too careful? Dakota Dickerson falling backwards quickly, and the bodywork now askew on the 6 after the contact that he had with the 34. Where is Dickerson in the order?
Yeah, he lost 3 or 4 places there, and that
Absolutely.
is not what he needs to do. He's going to have to make those places up again, and I think Courtney Crone could have done a little bit better job of getting out of the way of the leaders there, to be perfectly honest. But the big beneficiary certainly was the number 3 car. Rasmus Lind, he needs to be black flagged very, very quickly, because that car is is extremely dangerous out there right now for the pursuing drivers, let alone for Rasmus Lind.
Does the 54 have a problem, Jeremy? I mean, Dakota Dickerson still streaming backwards. A couple of cars in there are lap cars. They don't matter, but Lind has a problem. But Skeen was by, McAleer was by, Cangialosi was by. I think, what is up with that?
Yeah, and what is Lind playing at there? I mean, he just moved right over on, I think that was Stephen McAleer trying to make a pass on the main straight there, and clearly number 6 car has a problem. That car has to come into the pits right now. To stay out there is ridiculous. Okay, finally, he's bringing it in there. He's going to do a good... but look at him coming down the straight. He just moves across on the number 43 of Stephen McAleer, makes a move to the right-hand side, and for some reason Lind decides to move across and try and block him. That's poor driving from Rasmus Lind. We've seen some very questionable driving tactics in this race.
17 on pit road as well. Take a look at the start. So as they come down for the restart, Dakota Dickerson just behind the yellow and black 74, and Rasmus Lind, you see the smoke coming off the car as that bodywork begins to fall apart and disintegrate, and then they head down to turn 1, and it looked like Dakota just backed out of it. I'm sure he didn't want any part of bodywork coming off the 6, but
I'll tell you what happened there. Courtney Crone was on the outside, and she braked early for that corner, presumably to allow Dakota Dickerson to go down the inside, but Dakota was being cautious, and by the time he realized she was braking harder than he realized, he had to brake as well, because he could see that car to his inside, Rasmus Lind, even though it was damaged, and he didn't want to get caught up there and cause a wreck. So that's why I think what happened there, you can see from that tail end shot, great shot it was heading into turn 1, Courtney Crone hard on the brakes there, I think to try and do the right thing and let the leaders go past, but unfortunately she did telegraph that move a little bit too late as far as Dakota Dickerson is concerned, and he was, as I said, caught between a rock and a hard place.
Well, this is a problem for Dakota Dickerson. 15 minutes to go, and coming into the weekend, you just needed to be careful. You needed to collect your points. You needed that 5th place finish, which should be, in air quotes, easy, because you look at their performance all season long, and they've never been off of the podium. But that restart, when they came to it, I said 18 minutes will decide this championship. Dakota Dickerson losing those positions. Now he's got some very fast drivers he needs to get by. Garrett Grist just in front of him in the yellow and bright orange number 33, and then Dario Cangialosi in the 47, and the red and black 47 just in front. Dickerson needs to find a way by. He's got to get to 5th if the 21 stays in 1st.
Yeah, that's right. He's going to make out a couple of positions. As you say, he's got some very, very fast cars in front of him as well. So that's going to be a very, very tall order for Dakota Dickerson. He's looking now to the
there's one
inside.
He's got one of the 2 that he needs. So Dickerson now up to 6. DeWilde still in the lead in the 21. This would be a tie in the championship, and a problem for the 40. David Grant around in the 40. That's well up towards the bridge. Interesting, you don't typically see a car spin that far up the way. Oh, it started at the exit of 10B, and he's gotten into that tire wall out there, loose bodywork. Will they go yellow to repair that tire wall? Will they leave it? Dickerson wants to leave it. He wants to stay in the battle, wants to have time to fight. Looks like they will. And now Dakota Dickerson has his sights set on Garrett Grist just in front in the yellow and orange 33. He needs one more position. DeWilde, Hinman, Skeen, that's the top 3. Then McAleer and Grist. Dakota Dickerson needs to move forward. Let me ask you this, Jeremy. You think about manufacturers right now. It's a Duquesne chassis out in front in the hands of DeWilde. And then the championship hopefuls coming in, Dakota Dickerson, Josh Sargent in a Ligier. Just in front of Dickerson right now is the Ligier chassis of Garrett Grist. Is there any way, shape, or form that begging and pleading with the 33 to let him by in the closing stages so that Ligier can share in a championship, would that happen?
Well, I'm sure the team is going to ask the question, no doubt about it, because Garrett Grist and Ori Balog, I mean, they're just going for the win. They're not in championship contention. They haven't done all the races this season. it's going to be very, very unlikely for them to get the win here today. So will they play the kind of team game? As it stands right now, if Dakota Dickerson brings this number 54 car for MLT Motorsports across the line in the 6th position, they will be tied on points with Moritz Kranz, who has done the full season. Ugo de Wilde has not done the full season. It's Moritz Kranz alone who's looking to win the championship. They'll be tied on points, but with the win today, that will be 3 wins on the season for Moritz Kranz to just a single win of the number 54 team. So that'll be the tiebreaker. It'll be tied on points, but the tiebreaker will go in favor of the number 21 car.
11.5 minutes to go, and for Dakota Dickerson, he needs to put in the drive of his career, certainly the drive of 2021. On the last restart, the championship complexion changed immensely as he dropped from 3rd to 7th, now back up to 6th. He needs a 5th place finish or better for he and Josh Sargé to take home the 2021 IMSA Prototype Challenge Championship. And that is going to be a lot of work. 11 minutes to go. The next car in front, he needs to get by. The car in front of Garrett Grist in that yellow and orange 33 is a lap car, not in it for contention, and he lets Grist and Dakota Dickerson by.
Yeah, heads up driving there certainly, and yeah, the track is coming to the drivers now, so to speak. It's the warmer temperatures, lap times are coming down. The best lap of the race there for Ugo de Wilde. Still not the fastest lap of the race. Ooh, that's a big slide there. Was that Tony's Kazimets?
I believe it was.
Colours on that car, different colours. If it is, it's different colours on that car these days.
Well, he does the right thing. He gets on the curb and just straightens his hands because he knows otherwise he'll spin. How does he know that? Because he did spin in that exact same corner doing the same thing several laps ago. So the 60 out of the way, and that's clear sailing for Dakota Dickerson, but there is a large gap between himself and Garrett Grist. We talk about how fast Garrett Grist is. The 2 races that he's run so far this year, he set the fastest race lap. And so Dakota Dickerson, I believe right now, Jeremy, is losing ground to the 33.
Yeah, he is on that last lap because I think Garrett Grist, he was in the 16s. He has set the fastest lap of the race with a 16.2, has Garrett Grist. Again in that number 33 car. Dakota Dickerson, a 1:17.5 that lap. It was within 0.4 of a second of his best lap of the race. And as you say, losing ground there to Garrett Grist in the 6th position.
You want to win the race, you want to win the championship on your terms, you want to do it with your performance, but sometimes you need some help from others. For Dakota Dickerson right now, that help may come in the form of the number 40 of David Grant. If Grant can hold up de Wilde enough for Trent Hinman to get back in play. Hinman, the 3rd car in that order coming down the back straightaway, the bright yellow number 7 Volt entry. Now they're cheering on Trent Hinman to try to get past de Wilde, and he may get held up by David Grant just a little bit. If Dakota Dickerson can't get past Grist, they need Hinman to get past de Wilde.
I'm not sure what happened to David Grant there. All of a sudden, that car has just lost all its pace. And he's going to get out of the way here, I think, heading into turn 1 and let the race leader go past. Yes, indeed he does. So David Grant, they're going 2 laps down now in that number 40 car. He had been on the lead lap at the restart, so clearly something amiss with that number 40 Duquesne run by JDC Motorsports.
Well, when he went off there in 10B and made that contact with the wall, Jeremy, when he recovered from that spin, he actually came into the pit lane to check that car. So he's out of the way. He's let de Wilde through and Hinman, but Hinman's still just over a second behind, a little less than a second and a half off the rear wing of the 21. And in the distance, the 54, your championship leader on the way in, Dakota Dickerson, seems to be slipping back from the 33 of Garrett Grist just in front. He needs that position.
Yeah, and he is losing ground again on that last lap. 1:17.2 for Dakota Dickerson. That's within a 1/10 of a second of his fastest lap of the race. But now he's still continuing to lose ground to Garrett Grist, who is closing right up onto the tail now of Stephen McAleer. That the battle for 4th and 5th.
Grist with his blistering 16.5, a full second faster than any of the other cars up in front. Well, call it 0.7 of a second faster than de Wilde and 0.6 of a second faster than Trent Hinman. So Grist absolutely flying in the 33, and now he's caught up with McAleer. This is going to be a hard-fought battle. Like I said, you want to win on your terms, but sometimes it takes some luck, and right now the 54 going, have at it, boys, up in front. Perhaps somebody will have a problem, and you'll pick up that position. Not the way you want to do it, but if it gives you a championship and moves you into that points-paying contention that will do that for you, then you're all for it.
Yeah, that is definitely the case here. This is certainly an interesting battle going on here between Stephen McAleer and Garrett Grist. Stephen McAleer in that Robillard Racing car number 43, taking over from Joe Robillard, the team principal there. And Stephen McAleer, he's a busy guy this weekend. He's driving, or involved in pretty much all of the races here. He's driving an Aston Martin, the Michelin Pilot Challenge. He's driving an LMP3 car, I think. No, he's driving a GTD car in the Petit Le Mans, beg your pardon, making his debut in that car this weekend. And he's also, he owns a bunch of cars that are racing in the Mazda MX-5 Challenge as well. So he's a busy guy this weekend. That's Stephen McAleer, who's hanging on to that fourth place at the moment from Garrett Grist.
And if they weren't parking cars at Lanier Speedway across from Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, he probably would have run there last night. So you never know. The battle, though, coming to Stephen McAleer. Garrett Grist is now there on the rear wing of that Robillard Racing number 43. So that's a good battle. Mike Skeen has closed the gap in the battle for second place with Trent Henman and Ugo de Wilde just inching away, doing everything they need to do to try to win this race. And by doing so, and with the 54 finishing sixth, that would give the championship, I shouldn't say give, it would be a very well-earned championship for Maurice Krantz and Mueller Motorsports. But there's still 5 minutes to go. It doesn't sound like a lot, but we've seen it. It can all change in the blink of an eye, just as it did for Dakota Dickerson on that last restart with 18 minutes to go.
There is no question that Mueller Motorsports America car number 21, that has been the fastest car all season long. Maurice Krantz on the pole position for all 6 races. That's a remarkable feat in of itself. He's been a winner already twice this season, and if not for the mechanical problems he had last time out of VAR, he would pretty much had this championship not under wraps, but certainly would have had a healthy lead coming into this final race of the season. That wasn't to be, but everything is working that team's favor at the moment.
Great racing all year long in IMSA Prototype Challenge, as Garrett Grist really taking the fight to Stephen McAleer now through turn 5 on the run up to turn 6. We've seen it throughout the 5 previous events, and hats off to the drivers this weekend under some very, very difficult conditions. Cold, then cold and wet this morning on the racetrack changing every single lap. We've seen drama, good racing, hard-nosed racing here at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta as the 2021 season is closing down, and championship hopes beginning to dwindle a little bit for the 54 team, perhaps, but Dakota Dickerson answering back with a really good lap that time around. Yep. And as this battle intensifies in front of him, it's going to pull him right up there on it. He just needs to be by one of those cars. One position is all he needs for a championship for Josh Arget and MLT Motorsports.
Sounds so easy, doesn't it? As you said, last time around was his fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 16.486. That's the second fastest overall lap in this race by Dakota Dickerson. This time around, a 16.6. He's a full half a second quicker than that pair in front of him. He's now almost with them as they plunge down through the S's and up into turn 5 there. Dakota Dickerson pretty much right with there. I think by the end of this lap, he's going to be right with Stephen McAleer and Garrett Grist. That battle for 4th, 5th and 6th. He is 6th as Dakota Dickerson. He needs to be at least 5th.
2 minutes, just over 2.5 minutes to go for Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. Garrett Grist pulling to the right. Does he have a problem, or is he simply letting Dakota Dickerson by? As we discussed, that would give Ligier a championship. They're both in Ligier-entered cars, and Dakota Dickerson now in the position that he needs to take the championship. Dickerson up to 5th.
Wow.
Wow, indeed. I mean, you're speechless, Jeremy.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, big picture, Garrett Grist, he's a professional racing driver. He drives for Ligier on a regular basis. He wants to make a career for himself in this sport. He knows the folks at Ligier can help him to become a top line in the top ranks of sports car racing, prototype racing. So did he do that on purpose? Quite likely. We will perhaps find out at the end of the race, but certainly, in some ways you hate to see that. In other ways, you completely understand it. There's two completely different viewpoints on what happened there. But the fact of the matter is that coming into this race, Dakota Dickerson and Josh Sargent, they were in the driver's seat. They had the championship lead coming into this weekend, and just at that restart, it all kind of went awry for them. But Dakota Dickerson turning some very, very quick laps now. He is the fastest car on the racetrack, has been for the last several laps. And certainly Garrett Grist didn't want to make life any more difficult for Dakota Dickerson than he needed to do.
Garrett Grist showed what he was made of as a driver with the lap times, but he also obviously is a heady businessman, and that's what it takes in this sport. You've got to know your partners as the white flag waves, and it's an emotional sport, Jeremy. You and I both know that, both from inside the car and out. And think about the emotion for Maurice Krantz, Ugo de Wilde. I'm not going to give the championship to the 54 just yet. There's 2.5 miles to go, but think about that. You've done everything you could. You've led every lap. You qualified on pole. You had your competitor where you needed them, just outside the top 5, and we said it can change in an instant, and it did.
Yeah, and all these drivers have been around long enough to absolutely know that. Dakota Dickerson, he has had a huge amount of success in his career as a young racing driver. He's still only 24 years of age, from San Diego, California, a former winner in the F4 series in North America, the Formula 3 series as well, which is now Formula Regional, and also a Team USA scholarship winner. So he's showed his capabilities in the past, but this has been a fine performance by the number 31 team. Ugo de Wilde now just a couple of corners remaining.
For Maurice Krantz, Ugo de Wilde, they will see the checkered flag the 3rd time for the team this season, and the 1st time for de Wilde as he wins here at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. Trent Hinman will finish 2nd. The most important car perhaps on the racetrack, though, is right there, the 54, Dakota Dickerson, Josh Sargent. And I'll give some credit to the 33 of Garrett Grist. The 54, Dakota Dickerson, Josh Sargent, MLT Motorsports, with that 5th place finish, by our math, Jeremy, they clinched the championship.
Yeah, by the smallest possible margin these days. The points have been increased by tenfold in the past, so it's a 10-point differential. Under the old point scoring system, just a single point then will separate Dakota Dickerson and Josh Sargent. Provisionally, they've got to get through post-race technical inspection, of course, but it's been a masterful performance by Maurice Krantz and then by Ugo de Wilde to bring that car home. And Dakota Dickerson, again, he was the fastest car on the track in the last few stages. Yes, he needed a little bit of help. He got that help, but it looks like the championship is going the way of MLT Motorsports. That team based right here at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. Dr. Mike Thompson and that team, the race engineer and strategist is Tom Brown, who's been around this sport for a long, long time. Has had a huge amount of success with all sorts of different categories, and it's been a really fine season for this team.
It's not just a cliche, and that is the saying, it's not over until it's over. You just saw it. The race winner, de Wilde and Maurice Krantz, that's all well and good for them, but the championship, look at how it changed. Unofficial results, the 21 up front, Trent Hinman with a good run, another podium finish for Volt. Mike Skeen with a good run, as Stephen McAleer, and then Dakota Dickerson there in 5th. That's what they needed to do for the championship. For Rasmus Lind, a great season, but he's on the 2nd page of results there in 9th, then David Grant, and on through the rest of the field. A great season of IMSA Prototype Challenge Championship, a 2021 season, one that will be remembered. It came down to the line. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and what a great championship weekend we had here at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. For Jeremy Shaw, I'm Brian Till. Thanks for joining us all season long, and we'll see you soon in 2022. So long, everyone.